Hey everyone, welcome to episode 54 of the Austin Downbeat. I'm your host, Kat. Thanks for joining me this week. Yet again, I have an awesome interview for you. This one's a little bit different. I'm going to jump straight into introing her and talking a little bit about what she does and then let you get right to it. So my guest today is Patsy Dolan Bouressa. She is the executive director of SIMS Foundation. You can go to simsfoundation.org to check them out, but let me just tell you right now, an amazing nonprofit organization that specifically supports the musicians, bandmates, musicians' families with mental health and mental well-being, also behavioral health here in Austin, Texas. I hope that you feel called, like me, to set up a monthly donation to this wonderful place. I hope that you feel called to maybe volunteer if that's your thing. But at the very least, please watch and learn, especially if you feel like maybe it's time to get a little bit of help for your mental well-being. We have a very frank conversation. We talk about insurance. We talk about logistics. We talk about the shared human experience in real kind of brass tacks about how it really is. So if mental health has been a topic that has made you feel like, ooh, I don't know, depending on my religion or culture or gender or whatever, you feel like you're in a box, I invite you to watch this conversation. Patsy is doing amazing work. Her team, they are doing amazing work and they are changing lives. And I just am so excited to have this conversation and be able to play it for you. And I've been really looking forward to this one. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so it's perfect. They have their first festival at the end of this month on May 27th and 28th at the Far Out Lounge and Stage. They do really amazing things in this community, and I just feel so passionate about this subject. I think no matter what you do, we could all benefit from sitting down and talking with someone and getting some help. And there is no shame in that. It's actually quite liberating and wonderful. I could tell you from personal experience. So this episode is wrapped in love and wanting the best for every single person that watches it. And it's like a big old hug. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with the wonderful Patsy Dolan Bouressa, Executive Director of the SIMS Foundation here in Austin. Awesome. Welcome to the show, Patsy Dolan Bouressa, Executive Director of the SIMS Foundation. I'm so happy to have you on. I've been looking forward to this, so welcome.
Thanks, Kat. I was looking forward to it too, so I'm excited it's finally here.
I know. And we were just talking, it is the perfect time to have this conversation for a few reasons. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. You have a big event. I think it's your first event at the end of this month, which we'll talk about, but let's tease it here at the top too.
Yeah, we actually have several things coming up. We have an event at the Hotel Van Zant on Monday the 15th from 5 to 8. It's actually open to the public. It's showcasing, it's a gallery of all the art that Soundwaves Art Foundation did of about 20 plus Texas artists. And so all of the art is being sold for raising funds for SIMS. So that'll be a really nice little cocktail party that's open to anyone. And then we have our first festival. So we've never tried to do a festival. That's the Feel Good Fest at Far Out Lounge. That's on, it's Saturday and Sunday. So I think
May
28th and 29th, 27th,
28th.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. It's this last Saturday and Sunday of the month. So we're going to turn that into, in the long run, will be a 3-day music festival, but we're starting really small because this is our first one. So it's Saturday evening and then midday on Sunday. So we're looking forward to that.
I love it. And it's such an Austin thing to do, a festival. So
for sure.
It's perfect.
Because we don't have near enough of those around. Let's do more of it.
Well, there's a little bit of a lull happening right now. I feel like this is the perfect time right after South by to slip in and give us a little bit more. let's talk about, so the purpose of our conversation today and why I'm so excited to have you on is to really kind of peel back and have a very real conversation about what SIMS, all about what SIMS is, how it started, what you offer, and most importantly, to get very real and specific for people that are watching on how they access what you offer, what that actually looks like. Because, and I will say from my perspective as just a human being out here in the world, I love the fact that mental health is getting discussed more openly, more often than it certainly was when I was younger and a kid. And that's great. At the same time, I think that what happens from that, and I'd love your opinion, is buzzwords get born and things get sort of tossed around. And I just want to make sure that we're staying on the right path and that we are using terminology correctly. And also just that people, ultimately that might be considering like, hey, do I need to talk to somebody, or like what's going on in here? Like, am I someone that needs, how do they do that? And then how do we sort of shorten the space between, if you ever do get to a place, the reaction time of going, hey, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I know that I need something. So big goal.
I'm like, I don't even know where to start with that.
But that's the point. And that, when you and I talked on the phone, we just had such a great instant shared vision of this conversation. And so I think let's start with, first, tell me a little bit about you, because I can't even imagine. I know you are so busy. I'm just in awe of what you do. So talk a little bit about who you are and why you do what you do, and then we can kind of dovetail into SIMS and then the full menu of that service.
Sure. So from a SIMS perspective, at the end of the month, I will have finished my 6th year at SIMS. So when I was hired as the director of clinical services, and then I was promoted to executive director in December of 2019. But my story, if you will, is, I had a lot of exposure to mental health as a kid because I had a favorite uncle who's a psychiatrist. And so he would talk about it with me a lot. And I just found back then, psychiatrists actually did therapy as well, which they don't commonly anymore. So he had a really cool holistic perspective. So that sort of got my interest peaked at a very young age of exploring a mental health career. In addition, my dad was somebody who was in recovery from alcoholism. And so he did not stop drinking until I was in my late 20s. And so I had sort of that family exposure to that experience and what it did to all of us emotionally, including my dad. Struggling with alcohol and the impact on the family. So I kind of came at it from like, oh, educationally, that sounds like a cool thing. And then personally, I had all this experience. So I went skipping off to university and was going to I got my bachelor's in psychology. And then I sort of just was like, okay, I need a break. I moved to Dallas and I stumbled into a human resources career that I stayed in for 14 years.
Oh, wow.
So I really loved it. There was certainly a lot of similarities between what you do in HR management when you're dealing with like employee relations issues and therapy. So I definitely learned a lot about people's personal lives that I probably didn't need to know, but I loved it. And then after my 16th layoff that I had to conduct, I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. And then I got laid off myself. Like I laid myself off. I was the second to the last employee at this employer here in Austin. And so they were very gracious. They gave me a year's severance. So I got to sit around for a bit and kind of collect myself. And that happened to be the summer of 9/11. And when that happened, it just really struck me that even though I loved my career in human resources, I could not have been one of those people on Flight 93 knowing that they were going to go down and feel good about where I was professionally. Like I didn't feel like I was doing anything of real value. And so I went back and I really researched, different degree plans for knowing I wanted to be a mental health professional, but what's going to make me feel most fulfilled? And I settled on social work. mainly because of its very holistic approach. It doesn't just teach you how to be a therapist. It teaches you far beyond that. And that was definitely just sort of suited my sort of social justice views and the way I really envisioned life in general and what humans need. So went back, got my degree, and then the short version is I spent 5 years doing therapy at a residential treatment facility for kids, working with boys 10 to 13. And then when I was like overwhelmed with children, I created the only therapeutic reentry program in the state of Texas for adult male felons at Travis State Jail. And I did that for 4 years. And then ultimately I came to SIMS after working with one of their board members who's a psychiatrist, and he asked me to apply. So here I am.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of a
yeah, I love that. Mine's kind of like that too. People are like, oh my gosh, what happened? But I like that because I think it really lends to a well-rounded, and it seems like your path has really prepared you well for what you do now.
Definitely.
Let's talk about specifically SIMS website is so easy to navigate. I love simsfoundation.org. It's really nicely laid out of all the things that are offered. Let's touch on from a mental health perspective, specifically like what you offer at SIMS.
So the quick way of explaining it is we offer everything that the United States healthcare system has for mental health and substance use issues. So that's everything from every type of counseling. So individual, couples, family, group counseling. We even have band counseling, which is a lot like group counseling. We offer medication management for psychiatric issues, but also medication assisted treatments for substance use issues. Things that are considered outpatient programs. So intensive outpatient programs, partial hospitalization programs for both mental health and substance use, all the levels of care for substance use treatment, right up to hospitalization. So all of that we offer in our network. We do that for musicians, music industry professionals, and their dependent family members.
So if I'm the wife of a musician and I need a therapist, I can call SIMS and book with SIMS. Do I have to have insurance?
No, so that's a great question. So the quick, I guess, way to explain how SIMS works is we sort of function as an insurance company in a sense, because clients who come to us, we do a complete assessment to really help us understand what they're dealing with, what their history has been. That helps us inform the client of the variety of things that might be appropriate for them. Oftentimes people will call up and they have in their mind, I want individual counseling, let's say, but everything they're talking about is their teenage kid not doing well. And it never dawned on them to maybe that they actually might need couples counseling for the parents, and the child might need counseling, and the whole family might need counseling. So we take a lot of time to get to know the client and what the issues are so that we can provide education, so that they're going to make the best decision for themselves. We don't dictate what somebody does, even in the substance use realm. So a lot of people will call up and say, my spouse is going to leave me if I don't go to rehab, or my band's going to fire me if I don't go to rehab. But everything they're telling us is quite clear. They don't want to do rehab, but they don't know any different about what all the other levels of care are. So we take time to explain that and really make sure the client is getting what they need. And then we'll offer to talk to those people who are, trying to get them the care that they need, so that we can explain to them what they're doing is a perfectly legitimate path. They're not trying to get out of anything. This is a good care for them. So we do a lot of that. And then once the level of care is determined, we'll talk to the client about copays. So if you're going to counseling and you're going weekly, are you able to pay a $10 copay? If that's too much, is $5 better? We have some people who don't pay anything. And then SIMS pays the rest out of our actual pocket.
So let me stop you there. How let's talk a little bit about how you're able to do that.
Yeah. I love that. Like, wait a minute, I don't have to.
So there's like this thing called money and like survival and bills and
I appreciate you. Honestly, Kat, you're the very first person who's ever asked me that in the whole time I've been here. So thank you for asking. because I don't think most people really understand how nonprofits work anyway.
Yeah, explain it. This is the
So
education.
yeah, so we pay for our services the way any nonprofit pays for whatever it is that they do, and that's through things like individual donors, so people who just donate to us. The events that I just described, those are all fundraisers. So whether it's somebody buying a ticket to the festival, or somebody giving us money at the door because they like our, here's $10 because I like your mission. So those sorts of things. We have partnerships with corporations. We have a couple. One big one is with Deep Eddy. They've been a huge supporter of us, and I so appreciate that they are incredibly community minded and understand that their product is a problem for a portion of the population, and they want to be part of that solution. So
Yes.
those sorts of partnerships are huge for nonprofits. Lots and lots and lots of grant writing. So there are family foundations and corporate foundations that you fill out these crazy grant applications and hope that they'll give you the money. Let's see, those are probably the main ways that nonprofits make money so that they can do what they're doing. And so that's how we pay for services. That's just through all of those avenues of getting money in the door. And then that's used to, of course, keep the lights on, but also to pay for all of this care that we're giving.
Yeah. I wish that there was, it makes me nervous for you guys, I guess. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm listening to you and I'm going, that all sounds amazing.
It's
incredible. If I were running my life and my household like that, I would be nervous every month.
I'll be very honest, it's incredibly stressful. I mean, I don't think working at a nonprofit is not for the faint of heart, but definitely not being the executive director. It's a lot of pressure because you're constantly looking at the bottom line and panicking over where the money's going to come. And I, until you're like the size of a United Way, where you really don't have to worry about those things, it is stressful. But when I hit those sort of moments where I'm like, oh God, I can't sleep and I'm got a headache and all of that, it almost always happens that I'll be at the office and I'll get a phone call from one of our clients who just called to let us know that we saved their life. That I just wanted you to know that it's been 2 years since I've spoken to you, and this is what's happened, and I couldn't have done it without you all. And then it's like, okay, I can breathe again, and this is why we're doing what we do.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, that's like, that gives me the chills. That is what it's all about.
It is.
What can people do? I mean, I just like at this point, I want every single person that's watching this to stop what they're doing and get on your website and donate.
Right there, you just nailed it. I mean, really, it is that simple. I mean, signing up for even a really small, like a $5 a month recurring donation, attending our events, learning more about what we do. There's a lot of confusion. In Austin, we have over 130 nonprofits that are related to the music industry in some way. It's very difficult to figure out who's doing what for whom, and there's lots of confusion. And so, just educating yourself, and best way to do that is come to our events where, oftentimes somebody's hopping up on stage to talk for 5 seconds about SIMS, and we always have a table. We're always happy to talk to folks. Call us. We're absolutely happy to answer any questions. Email me directly, patsy@simsfoundation.org. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I think once people really get that understanding of how SIMS is different from the other 129, and learning about all those nonprofits that are doing great work, then you can have that knowledge to make decisions about how to support. But, I will say from a SIMS perspective, the last 3 years, the pandemic years, have been extremely brutal. You talked about at the start, Kat, that I just think is so important when you were asking about language, and now people are talking about mental health issues more. The problem is that I'm seeing is people are like, oh, so there isn't any stigma anymore and everything's fine because somebody's talking about it. And that is absolutely not the case. And so a really prime example of that, in Austin, the first year in 2020, there were all these millions of dollars that were raised for COVID related issues or basic needs. There were two giant funds that nonprofits in Travis County could apply for monies for. We couldn't apply to either because they didn't include mental health as a basic need. It wasn't even thought of. It wasn't even on the table. So
What?
yeah, it wasn't even included. And so that's such a prime example of it's there, it's in your face now far more than it's ever been, but nobody even thought of that. Basic physical health care was included, even
Right.
things like dentistry, which is awesome, but
Yeah.
mental health was not included. So
Wow.
we couldn't even access the majority of COVID related funds the first 2 years. So we went 2 years with almost no fundraising.
Wow.
It was truly two of the worst years that I think a nonprofit could have gone through. But people rallied around us and people who knew what we did, and we had clients who immediately tried to figure out ways to help. Like it was beautiful to see the support from those who knew us. But those sort of internal things are things that people don't realize because they're hearing, oh, there's this $3 million that can go to nonprofits, so you guys must be fine. Well, we can't apply to it because
So
nobody cares about that.
let me ask you, during that time, so you start a nonprofit, you have this nonprofit, you're doing amazing work that makes me want to cry. And then there's that, right? This like little loophole where you're like, actually, you guys, whoever
Yeah.
you guys are, didn't think of mental health, so we can't apply. Is there someone that you guys can say, hey, to, or are you just a nonprofit that you decided to start? Not you, but
Yeah.
that are you on your own, or how does
Yeah.
it
So
work?
fortunately, I don't want to call out any.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't want to like, yeah, throw any
Fortunately, for
shade.
one of the large groups or the large pots of money, if you will, it was being managed by an organization in town that I happen to know the executive director of.
Okay, good.
And when I called him, he was stunned. He was like, nobody even noticed that, like, because it's not in your mind,
Right.
because and in my view, it's because it's so stigmatized, right? It's too frightening to look at mental health issues. Nobody wants to look at that. So it's not even in your brain when you're creating these things. And that's a huge problem. Thankfully, now we're in 2023, and most of these kinds of foundations and giving organizations have gone back to their kind of regular areas that they give money to. So we're able to apply for things again. But all of those 2 years of COVID related funding, we couldn't access almost anything.
Yeah. It's like the syntax is out there floating in the air, but it's not landed on
Yeah,
on where to touch.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult. And then you mentioned something about insurance in the questions. So we have a lot of folks that we assist with their care who have insurance. So I think it's really important to explain why, because we do get that question.
Mhm.
Um, so with the inception of ACA and the marketplace plans, part of that law was that mental health care needed to be treated like physical health care. So there needed to be equity or parity.
Mhm.
Meaning if the plan has a $20 copay to go see your primary care physician, there needed to be a $20 copay to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. So on paper, everybody was like, that's amazing. So now we've got all these ACA plans and all these people we can just shove them onto their insurance. Well, the problem is that's inaccurate. That's not equitable, or it's not parity. You don't go see your primary care physician every week for a counseling session. You do your therapist. And for our population, 65% of all of our clients are below 200% of the poverty level. So
Mm.
you're looking at people who are making $15,000 a year, living in and around Austin, Texas. And now you expect them to pay a $20 copay every week to
Yeah.
go see their therapist. That's absolutely unattainable. So while we have a lot of musicians who are able to get on insurance through a great organization, HAM here in Austin,
Mhm.
that pays for them to get on that insurance for most of them is useless for a behavioral health care situation.
Yeah.
The other thing that people don't think about if you don't work in the mental health world is you can't go to just any therapist for a lot of the things that people are struggling with. If you have an eating disorder, you have OCD, or you have personality disorder that you're struggling with, you can't go to just a generalist kind of anybody on your insurance sort of thing. You need somebody who knows how to work within that disorder. Most of the people here in Austin that have that skill set are not taking insurance. So now you have these disorders, they could use their insurance because they could afford to pay it, but there isn't anybody on their plan that's appropriate for their care. Yeah. So
And that is the medical, it's just a tip of the iceberg for the
it
medical.
is indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could go on forever about insurance, but yeah, so that we get asked that a lot. Like, why are you paying for these people with insurance? Well, because I want to be sure they're getting the care that they need. And I want to be sure that they're able to go, that they're not like foregoing a meal so that they can afford their therapist. Like, these are not appropriate life decisions for somebody to have to make.
Mm-hmm. Crazy balls.
I love that.
I'm just so glad we're having this conversation. I too love psychology, and like I love talking about the stuff inside that makes us what we are. And I'm not afraid to have those conversations. I think it's just so important that we back up all of it with real talk. So let's actually get real. Let's set some sort of definitions. What is mental illness?
Wow. Okay. So I'll back up even further. I think the thing when someone like me is talking about mental health or behavioral health care, sadly, people's brains still go to somebody who's just really sick. And something you've seen in the movies. And when they hear that, they're like, well, that's not me. I mean, I'm not like that.
Right.
So I don't need that. I would venture to say that I would say for sure now we've all gone through a global trauma with pandemic. So many people lost people that were close to them. Many have not recovered physically. So we all have a shared trauma now, whether we use that language or not in our own life. So at this point, we all need therapy right now to like deal with what that did to us. But life tends to do that to us, right? I had a challenging childhood. I went to therapy. I was like, as soon as I went to UT, I got a therapist. I knew that household was not healthy. Love my parents, still love my parents, but it wasn't healthy. I needed to process my own stuff. So I would back up and kind of say, people need to call an organization like SIMS, or if somebody's listening to this and are not eligible for our services, they need to call a therapist or a place like Integral Care, which is our local mental health authority, to explore getting care when they're just struggling a bit. The problem is when you wait until everything's fallen apart, right? Like you've lost relationships and you've lost jobs and now you're not functioning at all. Back it up and do it right at the start of something going wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I think we'd all be much happier if we did say, I really just think I need to go to talk to somebody right now because I'm just fighting with my bandmates all the time and I need to figure out what's happening. Like that's perfectly acceptable and would probably make your band a little bit better and your relationships better. So that's the thing that I think we constantly strive for, is making sure people realize it's okay to just say, maybe I just need to go to a therapist and talk this out. And it might not be somebody you keep forever. It might be a situational thing. From a mental illness standpoint, though, what we see in our population is just a ton of depression, anxiety, and trauma. Those are the three top things, which, to varying degrees. Some people, their depression is mild and they really just kind of use their therapist as a, situational, occasional touchstone. Others have severe depression and maybe they do need to go on medications in addition to therapy, or maybe it's going to be better for them to go to an intensive outpatient program to really learn about their own illness and then go to therapy to figure out how all that knowledge can be applied to them. So there's so many things that we can do to help people that isn't about medication and it's not about hospitalization. We get these phone calls often from people who've been really struggling and are sort of just at their wits' end of what to do because nothing's okay, whether it's depression or it's maybe they're dealing with bipolar disorder. And they'll call up and say, well, can't you just put me in a hospital so I can just get some rest? And the sad thing is acute psychiatric hospitals are the least restful places in the universe. I mean, sadly, it's a very triage kind of environment where you have people who are actively psychotic and screaming and
Right.
hearing voices, and there it's not restful. And so we work so hard to get people to get care way before then, because that then re-traumatizes you or adds trauma. So there's all these things that we can do, and I think instead of pathologizing, just realizing this is part of the human experience. We all have these things that go on emotionally within us, and sometimes they're just too much for you and your friends to kind of deal with, right? And
Right.
friends are great, but sometimes they're like, I don't know what to do, like, yikes. But I think learning over time and teaching our children that it's okay to ask for help, that it's absolutely all right to express your emotions. It's okay to ask somebody you care about if they're all right, like in a serious way, not to just say, how you doing? But like, I'm noticing that you're not okay, and I'm here for you, and what do you need kind of conversations. And we just have to keep figuring out ways to educate adults about that, and then get comfortable to teach our children that, so we can eradicate this fear of acknowledging that we're just human and we need help sometimes.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've had my weekly therapy appointment and I've thought like, I think I'm actually pretty good this week. I
Yeah.
wonder, like, I don't know. I don't really think I have anything really coming up. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it's insane how, yeah, there's always something. There's always something. And I think if that can serve as any kind of encouragement to anyone watching, even if you think you're okay, there's something in there.
Yeah.
There's something in there to unpack and
Yeah.
a little road to walk down.
I
And
just think it's really impossible to go through life
how can there
never
not
experience.
be?
Yeah, I mean, we don't live in a sitcom, so I don't know. And but then having talked to people of all ages and worked with all ethnic groups and spiritual and religious beliefs, it's so fascinating to hear how all these different things that were a part of these different systems can really hinder or help you feel comfortable with saying, yeah, I'm not doing okay. I definitely need to go to a therapist, versus, maybe it's my culture, or maybe it's my gender that tells me I'm not allowed to do that. So there's so many things at play that keep us from, I guess, just acknowledging how we're all fragile, and that we all need help sometimes. Those are those big global things that we have to just keep finding creative ways of reaching. Like, we're not trying to change anyone's belief system, whether it's their culture or their faith, but there's a way to add this as just a supplement to what the rest of your systems are telling you is all right to do. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting problem, and yeah, it's
it
just
is. And like the problem solver in me, I'm like, okay, number one, someone out there needs to start a chain similar to a hotel, but have it be a chain of rest places, like not a hotel, not a psychiatric ward. Those are
yeah.
the extremes, but somewhere so nice in the middle where you just go to rest.
So I'm smiling so broadly because one of the really cool things that happened during the first year of the pandemic is, it's too long of a story to get into, but I got pulled into this weekly Thursday morning meeting with people from literally all over the globe who were touring professionals in some form or fashion, whether they were band management of big touring bands, they were tour managers, all the crew that go with it from
Mhm.
everywhere. And then me. I don't know, there I was going, I don't know why I'm here. And it started out with them really trying to figure out, how do we tour safely if we have another pandemic? Can we write a handbook or whatever? And then it turned into, ultimately, as it dragged on, a support group for all of us. And we all became really great friends. Well, out of that was a woman named Courtney Clemson and her husband, Paul. They live in, I can't remember the name of the town. It's a teeny town outside of Detroit-ish area. And they started a thing called the Roadie Clinic with exactly that in mind. Because so
Oh,
many nonprofits across the nation that deal with music industry, it's only for musicians. There's literally nothing for crew. And they were part of crew. And so they were like, why isn't anybody taking care of us? Their idea was too that if you were a touring crew member and you needed a place to just rest and eat properly, that your family could come and stay there with you. And
Mm.
it's just this beautiful mission that they literally started it 2 months before the world shut down. I know. But they're still chugging along. And so that was exactly what you're saying, is we all need that place to just
Yeah.
go and unplug and rest. And if you don't have that like ability to do it in your own home, then wouldn't it be cool if you had a nice place that maybe did have therapists on staff in case you needed them? I think that's a really great idea. I would
Yeah,
love.
like I can see it, like,
Yeah.
have them be as common as a La Quinta.
Yeah. Love it.
No offense, La Quinta, but a little bit nicer.
I love that. That's awesome.
But yeah, like hopefully, as I mean, obviously you and I in our lifetime in the very recent years have seen such a rapid progression of the conversation around mental health. There's no
Yes.
doubt about that,
Mhm.
regardless of our opinions on it.
Yeah.
Um, so I hope within our lifetimes as well, we start to see some action. I'm such a fan of action and solution and smart action.
Yeah.
And I do think that is a really, I mean, I would check myself into one for sure. And I love my home. My home is my sanctuary,
Yeah.
and also it'd be really nice just to be able to go like, hey, I'm going to go rest, and
Yeah.
for people to know what that means, you know what I mean? For that to become kind of part of our way in this country would be really cool.
I agree. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more, actually.
Yeah. Second thing is going back to like, oh, I was going to ask you something about, you were talking about um just people kind of realizing, hopefully by hearing this and going to events, but is there like, I don't know, I just guess this is just my brain and how it works. Like, I just want everyone to know, like, to not be scared.
I think that's the key word, is to not be scared. And there's so many different reasons why this topic is frightening, especially when people start to turn it on themselves and see like, oh, do I need help? It's
Mhm.
scary because I think in part I hear people talk about like it feels like a loss of control. If I'm admitting that I need help, then maybe I don't have control over things. There's always that really old, and I hate to use the word I'm going to use, but there's that old school stigma. Well, I'm not crazy.
Mhm.
And so for me to go to a therapist, there are many people still who think that that means I'm somehow really sick, and I'm not that.
Right.
So I don't need that. And that's just rolled up in the stigma. But there's all these layers as to why this topic frightens people. And almost 100% of the time, when somebody who's super frightened about it and then finally goes and gets the right therapist, we'll get that phone call like, dude, I can't believe I haven't done this. And like, oh my gosh, it was nothing like what I thought. Yeah, it's hard, but I can tell it's like helping me. So it's that, getting over maybe those first like 3 sessions where you're like, what am I doing here? What's this
Yeah.
about? I don't like it. And then starting to really connect with your therapist and start doing the work. We always get those calls like, I can't believe you've been asking me to consider therapy for the last like 5 years that I've known you. And I finally went.
Mhm.
It's changing everything. So I've heard that at every job, every single job, even those men out at the prison that I worked with. They were like, no, but what are you going to do for me? Like, this is crazy. My life is nothing that is in that therapy world, right? Like, I don't have money to go to therapy. And that's, what are you talking about? And then when we would connect them to therapy, they were like, this is, wow. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. So it's so cool, but it's how do you bridge that? How do you bridge, like, I'm terrified for whatever my reasons are, but I'm going to take that risk, right? How do you bridge that? It's so difficult.
Do you guys do you does Sims try to help with that? Do you ever have like, I know obviously there's confidentiality like crazy balls in, between patient and all that stuff, but are there some musicians out there that do use your services that feel comfortable and are like, screw that, I'm telling the world that I use Sims? I mean,
We're super fortunate.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
talk a
we're
little bit.
very fortunate. I'll use the example because they're also one of the only bands that take us up on band counseling, and they're very vocal about it. And it's the guys from Bright Light Social Hour.
Nice.
Um, they have been clients with us for a long time. Regularly, they'll do counseling leading up to a tour, and then they'll go out, and then they'll do counseling coming back, which I think is brilliant. Like, they just think that's brilliant. And almost all of them have credited that to how they've managed to stay together. I mean, it's stressful doing what they do. They're loud and proud about it, and that's just a good one because they use band counseling. But we do have a lot of people, so many people who come to our like create events for us, turn their show at wherever into something for us, and then they're up there talking about what SIMS has done for them, which is invaluable because every time, it's great when somebody like Lady Gaga or, Selena Gomez and those big names talk about their own mental health challenges. That's amazing. But when you're in a town and you're like the person kind of slogging away, trying to get their career going, to hear somebody else that is local, that you admire, that maybe you go see at their residency at Saxon or whatever, talking about their struggles, it makes it more real.
Oh, totally.
Somebody who's a billionaire talking about their therapy experience, which again, there's huge value in that. But to have those folks stand up on stage and say, this is why I'm doing my event for them, because this is what they've done for me. That's so huge. It's so huge.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm gonna come to the one the festival at the end of the month, and I'm excited to see who's there, and I'm excited to feel the feeling. I mean, it is called the Feel Good Music Festival, so I'm sure it's gonna feel amazing. But I'm really excited just to get all the senses involved, and just so I encourage people to come. Again, it's May 27th and 28th at the Far Out Lounge and Stage, and there are so many people playing. It's hard to name them all.
There are so many.
I didn't even write it down.
Yeah, I couldn't memorize them if I tried. I'll bring up another event because Betty Sue has done this multiple years, and it's her Girls Who Like Boys Who Like Girls. And this year's, I went as the executive director for the first time, and it was so hard to get up on stage because I just kept crying. Like, it was just, she has one person get up and talk about the next person in line. So it'd be like, I'm getting up and I'm so uncomfortable to sing in front of Kat because I'm going to sing her blah, blah, blah song. And they were sharing their own sort of personal connections with each other's music. And then those that were familiar with SIMS or used SIMS also talked about that. But it was just this beautiful evening of joy and sharing and true, like crazy mad respect for each other's music and skills and songwriting. It was a lot to get up on that stage and not be a blubbering mess. So
I bet I would be, yeah, this kind of stuff is really like, it gets me. And so, cause it means so much, so I'm right there with you. I would be completely, yeah. What else did I want to talk to you about? Let me see. People can volunteer, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so most of our volunteer opportunities are actually at these events we're describing. So it's most often tabling for us at an event, which is you just behind the SIMS table answering questions, taking donations, and getting to see live music for free. So that's the bulk of how we use our volunteers. Anybody who wants to volunteer, they're on simsfoundation.org. There's a get involved button, and you just go to the volunteer thing and sign up. We do have a short volunteer training because you mentioned language, and it is super important to us that we're careful about our language and that people who are representing us are able to answer the questions about the organization in a way that is, I hate the word appropriate, but is using appropriate language around these issues, because we don't go to the events and talk about mental illness. Like, that's not what we talk about.
Right.
We're here to help people who are mentally ill. It's more around emotional well-being. Like, how do we help you stay in a positive place? How do we help you take care of your own well-being? That may sound like a really minute change, but it's huge when you're talking to somebody who's maybe considering using our services.
Right.
So yeah, we do a little training with them and make sure that they really understand our mission, and then of course the logistics of tabling, but really around how SIMS communicates what we do, and really making sure they understand what we do, because a lot of people get it confused.
Yeah. That brings up kind of my last question, because, we talked about sort of the illness side of it, or the struggle side of it, but I also wanted to also define and talk about mental well-being and what that looks like, and the normalization of that, because it's not, I don't think, that it means that everything is perfect. And to me, I would say that if I had to define it, it's just maybe in my own life, it's where I feel a sense of balance. I can recognize when I'm not on balance. And when I'm not on balance, I know to stop and breathe
Mhm.
and respond instead of react. And I also know who and what my support tools are,
Yeah.
and I'm confident to use them.
Yes.
So is there, what am I off base, on base? I think you're shaking your head, so I think I'm okay.
No, no, you nailed
Is
it.
there
And I
any
think
other description to that? Just well-being? Because I want to paint a really normalized and realistic picture for people that are watching. It doesn't
yeah,
mean that everything's a bowl full of
no,
strawberries or whatever.
because none of us have
Right.
perfection. I mean, that's impossible. Plus, I think that'd be really boring. I mean, honestly, I just
Plus,
think it
there would
would be
be
so
no
boring.
good music, because
Yeah.
like the pain, I like the pain,
Yeah, there'd be
you know?
no, great books or poetry or painting.
Right.
Like it would just be very flat and dull. You nailed it. And I think the thing for two things that I think I'd want to point out, again, we live in a culture where we have all these phrases that are kind of meaningless, but actually detrimental, like just pick yourself up by your bootstraps and just get over it. And
Man up.
yeah,
Yeah.
man up. Those are meaningless statements that actually cause harm, because then when you're the person who can't just get over it, what happens is you start thinking, well, why am I the only one who can't just get over it? So like that is not helpful at all.
Mhm.
You've clearly done your work and kind of learned what your tools are, but I think that's the starting point, is just what you said, acknowledge that it's not always going to be perfect. What we've talked about, we all need help in some form or fashion. And I'm not a mental health professional pusher. If your mental well-being is dealt with through yoga, that's spectacular. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying everyone has to go to therapy, but it's a matter of knowing it yourself enough to know when something's not okay,
Mhm.
and then acknowledging that, squashing it. So that's the second point. What we love to do is be like, well, that doesn't feel good, so I'm just gonna, and then if I push it down far enough, I think it's gone. And then of
Mhm.
course it explodes out some other way. I used to, when I was dealing with the little boys, and of course they didn't have a way to express themselves except to get angry and violent. And so I always have a water bottle. And I was one day with a real little guy who was extremely violent and but angelic looking. So it was very strange. And so he just couldn't articulate anything but anger. Like, and you could just see like his little body. And finally I said, okay, Bob, if this water bottle is you, I said, yeah. And I said, so what happens if I just keep pouring water in it? And he said, well, it's going to overflow. And I said, so what happens if, I have water to here and I kind of slowly pour it out, and then maybe pour a little bit more and then slowly? He goes, well, it never overflows. And I said, so that's what's happening with you. You're not pouring anything out. You're not expressing yourself. You're not talking about how you're feeling until it's overflowing. And then you go rageful.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how to tip the water out of you a little bit at a time. And so that connected with him. And that's what I think we all struggle with, is how do I express what I'm feeling? And so
Mm.
finding those tools
Mhm.
that help you. And maybe it is, I'm going to do yoga and that makes me feel good right now. And then maybe a year from now, you're like, maybe that's not really working so well for me anymore. Okay, well, that tool still works, but what do I add? And maybe then
Mhm.
it might be therapy. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe you take up running, whatever it is that helps you to
Mhm.
kind of dump that stuff out of your water bottle in a healthy way so that you can keep going.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what therapy does. It's kind of dumping all that out, but then having somebody who's there who can help you kind of then weed through it and go, well, what's
Organize it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. With my children, we call it letting steam out of your pot.
Yeah.
The key, though, I think that goes hand in hand with that. And that little boy is so lucky to have you
Oh,
be
thank
that
you.
person to handle the steam that's coming
Yeah,
out. And I think sometimes the partner in that isn't always able to handle someone else's big feeling. And
absolutely.
so that is why I think therapy is so crucial in that circumstance, because we are not raised. Hopefully, there's a new generation coming in. But I know I wasn't raised where I was told flat out, your feelings they're not like facts are what matter. Feelings,
Yeah,
no good
don't
in this
matter.
house. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So what do you learn to do? You learn to push and push and push.
yeah.
And if I have a big feeling, then you go into shame, right? Like, so
Mhm.
you have to have a place where you can not only let the steam out, but that it lands on someone that knows how to receive it. And I think if
Absolutely.
you don't have that situation in your life and in your home or village of people, even more of a reason to then consider therapy as an option, because you deserve to let your steam out of your pot.
Yes,
And you
yes,
also deserve someone that knows how to catch it and
absolutely.
just catch it, you
And
know?
I think it's so crucial too. Like it's wonderful. I have a great circle of friends that I can turn to when things are not going well. Um, Fortunately, I also know when whatever I'm feeling is beyond their capabilities of handling, but most people don't know that, which is fine. They didn't go to school for it.
Right.
Um, it's so important though for our villages to be able to say, I can't carry this with you. And I really think now maybe is the time for you to seek help for this because I want to be there and I'll still be there. So it's how do we get over our fear of letting people we care about know
Yeah.
that we can see that they are not all right and
Yeah.
we're going to be there for them, but we really think they need to take that next step and that we'll be there to support them in that next step. So
Yeah.
that's the other half of the fear. Like we are fearful of looking at that in ourselves, but we're also fearful of acknowledging to people that we're seeing that something's going terribly wrong. And it's, for all the kind reasons, it's I don't want to hurt their feelings, or what if I'm wrong? And then they I think there's something wrong with it. Like all of those sort of human nature fears
Yeah.
that we have. And so it's coming from a really loving place that people often don't just get that blunt. Like I can genuinely see there's something wrong.
Mhm.
But I've never heard of anyone doing that and it going horrible.
Right.
Usually, even if it goes horrible in the moment, the person that you're caring for can go away and at least recognize that that was coming from a place of love and there was no judgment around it. They were really trying to help. And so, how do we overcome that fear where we can really just reach out over the aisle and say, I'm here, but this is bigger than the two of us and you
Mhm.
need help?
We gotta love fiercely.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
I mean, I tell my kids, I'm like, I'm gonna be up in your grill for life.
And they're like, great, thanks,
Don't
mom.
you think that just because you're growing up and now you might be driving soon, that I'm not going to be sitting outside that party just waiting for when you need me? Like, I'm going to be on you. Like, I love you the same strength as I did when you took your first breath. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I think that fierceness of, when you are in someone's village, just love the shit out of people, even when it's
Exactly.
hard, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because those conversations are never easy. They're not
Yeah.
easy to hear when it's about you, and it's not easy to bring that subject up for somebody you care about. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. But that's what love is sometimes.
It
So
is.
I
Sometimes
agree.
it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for spending time. I feel like this is such a gift, hopefully, to people watching. Hopefully they understand that it's really, really not, it might be scary, but it's not scary for long, and that it's not hard. And you have such a wide net of people that you serve, and that makes me so happy. And I just feel like this town is awesome. And it's just that much more awesome because SIMS Foundation is in it and because you are at the helm. And
Oh, thank you.
I'm so glad that I have you in my life in this capacity now, and that we know each other and I can come and support and try to get every single person I know to donate.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Kat. I loved doing this. This was a lot of fun. And I really appreciate your thoughtfulness of the things that you felt were important to bring up because you nailed it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I really want people to hear this and see this. I'm going to be pushing this episode multiple times. I love all my artists and singers and bands, and I do so much, but this is foundational.
Yeah.
It's foundational. And I want every single person that is on the show, has been on, that is affiliated in some way with the music industry in this town to really take advantage of what you offer, and to not only take advantage of it, but to also support it. So that's the
Thank
goal.
you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. I would jump through this screen and hug you so tight right now, but I will one day when I see you at the end of the month at the festival. I will.
That's right.
You better get ready.
I'm a huge hugger, so I'll be ready.
Okay, good. All right. Well, that does it. Be sure to go to simsfoundation.org and donate and do whatever you can to support this organization. They're so important in this town. Be sure to check out their first festival ever coming up at the end of this month, May 27th and 28th. And then you also have on May 15th at the Van Zant, you have a little cocktail party with the art.
Yep,
Awesome.
open to the public from 5 to 8.
Beautiful. I'll push that out because that'll happen before this airs.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, you can call SIMS. You can email Patsy at simsfoundation.org. I have a feeling they just make it really easy for you. So
We try.
yes. All right. Thank you again, Patsy, for coming on. It's
Thank
been
you, Kat.
joy.
Yeah, same here. Thanks.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. You know your marching orders. You know what you need to do, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.